Warning, this podcast contains descriptions of murder, torture and abuse. As a result, it may not be suitable for everybody. Llandudno, Wales, a seaside resort town and community in Conwy County Borough, Wales, located on the Creuddyn peninsula which protrudes into the Irish Sea. In 2011 UK census, the community, which includes Gogarth, Penrhyn, Craigside, Glanwydden, Penrhynside and Bryn Pydew, had a population of 20,000. The town's name is derived from its patron saint, Saint Tudno. Listen to the hometown murders of Sophie Louise Hook, a 7-year-old British child who was murdered in Llandudno, Wales in the early hours of the 30th of July 1995. She was from Great Budworth near Northwich, Cheshire, but was staying at a Llandudno home of her uncle Danny Jones, whom she was murdered. She had gone missing from a tent where she was camping in her uncle's garden, and her body was found washed up on a nearby beach several hours later. Sophie Louise Hook was born on the 22nd of May 1988 and died on the 30th of July 1995. Her body was found in Llandudno, Wales in the early hours of the 30th of July 1995. She originated from Great Budworth near Northwich, Cheshire, and was staying at the home of her uncle Danny Jones. She'd gone missing from a tent while she was camping in her uncle's garden, and her body was found washed up on a nearby beach. Howard Hughes was arrested for the murder soon afterwards and sentenced to life imprisonment after being found guilty in July 1996. Following his trial, it was revealed that Hughes had been linked to multiple sex attacks against children, but police had been unable to prosecute either because of a lack of evidence or because the victims' parents had wanted to spare their children further ordeal in court. As Hughes was sentenced, Mr. Justice Richard Curtis said, quote, "You are a fiend. Your crime is every parent's worst nightmare come to pass. No girl is or ever will be safe from you. My recommendation, in view of your appalling crime and maximum danger you expose to girls, is that you never ever released." End quote. In November 2002, Home Secretary David Blunkett ruled that Hughes would have to serve a minimum term of 50 years in prison before he would be considered for parole. On the 29th of July 1995, Sophie Hook, aged 7, was visiting relatives in Llandudno with her family to celebrate her cousin's birthday. During the afternoon, Sophie stripped to her underpants to play with the children in an inflatable pool in the garden. Hughes is believed to observe the children, including Sophie, from a concealed point on a bridle path overlooking the property. Hughes was spotted in the area on his bicycle by several witnesses. He told one woman, a woman walking her dog, who saw him crouching in the bushes, that he was looking for money that he lost. From the bridle path, Hughes would have been able to overhear the children's conversations and was aware that they were planning to spend the night in a tent in the garden. Later that day, he is believed to have attempted to abduct the 6-year-old Alexandra Roberts, who was doing handstands in a park less than 4-minute cycle ride from the garden, but the girl ran away. At 12:20 a.m. on the 30th of July, one of the children decided to sleep in the house, although 3 others, including Sophie, stayed outdoors. Sophie's uncle, whose house it was, checked the children at 12:40 a.m. before retiring for the night, leaving the door open at the rear of the house in case any of them decided to come in. At 2:30 a.m, Sophie's cousin woke, checked the time and noticed that Sophie was still in the tent asleep by herself and her sister. At 2:55 a.m, Hughes was spoken to by a police officer who saw him while patrolling the town's promenade. When her cousin next woke at 7:15 a.m, he found Sophie was missing. Her sleeping bag was on the grass outside and her favourite cuddly toy was still inside the tent. Having failed to locate her after searching the garden and surrounding fields, she was reported missing to the police at 8:20 a.m. It is believed that Hughes had lifted Sophie, still asleep, in her sleeping bag from the tent at some time in the early hours of 30th of July. Her naked body was found washed up on the beach half a mile away at Llandudno at 7:10 a.m. on the 30th of July 1995 by a local man walking his dog. Examination by Home Office pathologist Dr. Donald Waite revealed she had been subject to attack involving, quote, considerable force, end quote, when she had resulted in a right upper arm and ankle being broken, her body being covered with bruises consistent with the gripping of a child by hand, and bruising around her head and face were consistent with punching or slapping. She had suffered internal bleeding and had been violently raped and sodomised. The majority of injuries were comparable with those normally suffered by people killed or seriously injured in major car crashes. All of the injuries were sustained while she was alive. Dr. Waite said during the attack she'd been in so much pain she left teeth marks on the both sides of her tongue and inside of her lower lip. Death was caused by manual strangulation, lasting up to 3 minutes, after which her body was been thrown into the sea, probably an effort by the killer to wash away forensic evidence, near a cliff named Little Orme at the eastern end of Llandudno's parade. Her clothes, a distinctive pink and white Winnie the Pooh nightdress, knickers and a pair of Marks & Spencer's socks embossed with pink flowers, were not found at the time. Howard Hughes was born on the 9th of June 1965 and was born in Llandudno, Wales to Gerald and Rennie Hughes. He had 3 older sisters and his father was a well-respected civil engineer and businessman operating a successful contracting and quarrying firm. Hughes was born with sex chromosome abnormality XYY syndrome, which caused him to grow at an unusual rate, attaining 6 foot by the age of 11 and 6 foot 8 inches by adulthood. He also had behavioural problems, learning disabilities and dyslexia. Hughes's father paid for him to attend private schools, quote, in the hope that he would be able to do something with him, quote, due to his often violent behaviour as he regularly lashed out to other pupils. When Hughes was rejected after 2 terms by Lindisfarne College at Winstay, Wrexham, his father unsuccessfully offered to pay double the normal fees if they could keep him as a pupil. In 1975, aged 10, Hughes was sent to Bank Hall, a residential school for educationally subnormal children in Chapel en Frith, Derbyshire. In 1979, he transferred to Woodlands Private School in Digney, Wales. Despite his parents paying for extra tuition, Hughes failed to gain any qualifications. The murder inquiry was led by Detective Superintendent Eric Jones from North Wales Police. In a statement to the media, he said, quote, whoever was responsible for this crime is a very dangerous man, a brute who must be caught quickly, end quote. Hughes was arrested at the home he shared with his mother at 3:50 p.m. on the same day that the body was discovered and detained at the police station in Real Clyde to assist their inquiries. On the morning of the 3rd of August 1995, the Crown Prosecution Service and police agreed there would be not enough evidence to charge Hughes with the murder of Sophie Hook, who had been released at 3 p.m. that day only to be rearrested over the possession of indecent images of children that had been found in a police search at his home. Within 7 hours, he was charged with the murder of Sophie Hook, with a police statement citing this development was, quote, on the basis of further information. He was remanded in custody to await trial the following year. Hughes went to trial on Chester Crown Court on the 24th of June 1996, charged with abduction, rape and murder. The jury heard no forensic evidence which linked Hughes to the death of Sophie Hook, but they received valuable information from 3 witnesses. Hughes's father, Gerald, told the jury that his son had admitted to the murder of him shortly after he was arrested and being held in custody at a local police station, although Hughes himself always denied that any such confession took place. Jonathan Carroll, a 30-year-old career criminal who was also in prison at the time he testified, told the jury that he'd seen Hughes carrying a Hessian sack along a Llandudno street on the night of Sophie's murder, and that he caught a glimpse of a naked body in the sack. Carroll himself admitted he was in the possession of stealing property from a garden of a house when he saw this happening. A third witness, convicted child sex offender Michael Guidi, testified that Hughes had boasted to him a few years before that he would like to rape a girl of 4 or 5. The jury also heard details of the injuries that Sophie had sustained in the attack, many of which had been inflicted before she died. On the 18th of July 1996, the jury returned a guilty verdict on all 3 charges against Howard Hughes. The 31-year-old was given 3 light sentences by trial judge Mr. Justice Curtis, who branded Hughes a fiend and recommended he would never be released from prison. This provisionally placed him with the small group of prisoners who were issued with whole life tariffs, although the Home Office did not immediately confirm Hughes's tariff. On the 5th of September 1997, the Court of Appeal gave Howard Hughes leave to appeal against his conviction for the abduction, rape and murder of Sophie Hook. 6 months later, he sparked further outrage by launching a £50,000 compensation claim against Bryn Pydew Children's Home, where he claimed he was abused as a child. 2 weeks later, the Court of Appeals rejected Hughes' bid to have his convictions quashed. Hughes' second appeal took place on the 4th of September 2001, but the Court of Appeal again decided there was no grounds for his conviction to be quashed. The judges who made the decision also ruled that they would not allow Hughes to further contest his conviction unless any new evidence turned up. Hughes then reportedly decided to challenge his conviction in the European Court of Human Rights, but has yet so far to do so. His case is supported by Innocent, an organisation which campaigns against miscarriages of justice. In June 2004, the far-right British National Party came under heavy media and public criticism for distributing literature across North Wales featuring an image of Sophie Hook and several other victims of similar murders as a part of a campaign for the reintroduction of the death penalty. Jerry Davis, the man who found Sophie's body, spoke of his disgust at the BNP's exploitation of the tragedy and stated that it was, quote, vote loser for the BNP rather than a vote winner. The party had not consulted the families of the murdered children for the permission to use